The latest college football rankings and bracket are officially out. We are here live reacting to all of that here on November the 12th, 2024, the second official college football playoff top 25 and projected bracket. I am Chris Phillips. He is Dave Shumate. He is Cole Thompson. And, of course, we are SEC Unfiltered. Make sure you like, subscribe, turn notifications. Check us out via podcast where you get those. You can also find us across all social media platforms, as well as our website, secunfiltered.com. And this segment brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks, the official sponsors of the SEC Unfiltered Tour, which will see us this weekend in Athens, Georgia, for what may feel like a college football playoff eliminator, or at least an influential game in the college football playoff race. Go to prizepicks.com. Use promo code SECU at sign-up to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 or more lineup. And let me remind you, right now we've got some SEC basketball on. SEC basketball is in full swing. It's not just football. You can play college football, NFL, college basketball, everything in between, UFC, NBA, you name it, they've got it. Prizepicks.com. Promo code SECU to get that $50 bonus today. The latest college football rankings, the top 25, and, of course, the projected brackets are officially out, the second of such here on November the 12th, 2024. We are here live reacting to all of that, giving our thoughts as the madness continues and the debate rages on as we try to sort this thing out over the next few weeks before that final date in December, where we will know officially who is going to the 12-team college football playoff and who is being left out. Gentlemen, what's going on? I'm Chris Phillips. Of course, I'm joined by Dave Shumate and by Cole Thompson, which, by the way, drop some bear emojis in the comments if you don't mind.
Bear, baby.
Polar bear, Cole the Bear Thompson, he'll officially be known as, just in case Chris Felica gets his injury report wrong. I'm standing by that, Cole. We were talking about that off air. Drop the bear emojis if you want Cole to go off tonight. It's going to happen either way, but just do it for fun. Guys, what's going on? Really excited to break these down with you. We were really anticipating what the committee was going to do. We got some more answers tonight.
Hey, and the origin is Polar Bear for the people out there, not Polar Bear, Polar Bear. So if the nickname,
it's about time we let this out. We've been doing this for months. We just didn't.
If people want to know the origin, if they want me to use it in a sentence, we can say
behind closed
Polar Bear in the Lone Star State. But college football playoffs week 2, I want to see how much Ole Miss moved up. That's where I was interested at. We saw they ultimately made the move to number 11. And then the other thing, before I moved our guy Cole, I feel like we got a little contradicting here in this poll, a little in the back half. I mean, me and Chris talked a little bit off air there. If you're going to be consistent with head-to-head, guys, let's be consistent. You have South Carolina at 21, LSU at 22. Maybe the close game was the difference. Again, we can make the argument South Carolina could have easily won the game, but LSU did win. They're a spot below. And then you get Ole Miss at 11, Georgia 12, and I would say Georgia's played the more difficult schedule, obviously with the number 1 strength of schedule. So maybe recency bias again, but I feel like if we're going to do head-to-head, which I'm perfectly fine with and actually lean towards, let's be consistent.
We only have Louisville at 20 because they have the head-to-head over Clemson. But South Carolina is the best 3-loss team in the country, and I will stand on that ground until the cows come crying home, because if that is a fact, that is something that we can all agree with. But unfortunately, because we got to give them a little bit more credit, or credit's due, because if it's a 2-loss Clemson team, they're in. But for everyone who saw my rant earlier today, talking a lot about what was going on with a 3-team playoff team getting on in, do you understand why I said what I said? Because of where the 3-loss teams, 20, 21, 22. You know why now a 3-loss team is probably not getting in unless they win their conference championship. That's all I will say.
Yeah, Cole's been ranting about this hours before the rankings ever even dropped. So without further ado, guys, let's go ahead and get into it. We'll do what we did last week. We'll do it every single week. We'll first look at the top 25, then pull up the bracket, go from there. This is the college football playoff top 25 week 12 rankings, and I'll go down these really quickly, guys. Just give me a moment. 25 through 13. Here we go. Tulane, Army, Mizzou, LSU, South Carolina, Clemson. Then you go Louisville, Washington State, Colorado, Kansas State, Texas A&M, SMU. Boise State at 13, which They are still the projected, G5 champion, the G5 representative Mountain West champion, I think I should say. So they would be the 12 seed in the bracket, which we'll get into in a second. Let's stick with the rest of the top 25, though, guys. Then we'll get into the bracket itself. Start with the 20 through 25. Dave, you mentioned this. Greg McElroy mentioned this as well. Again, Tulane jumps in the top 25. Army's still in there. Missouri at 23. And you got LSU at 22, who fell significantly after they got blown out by Alabama. Deserved to fall. South Carolina at 1, who beat them, or who LSU beat head-to-head in Columbia. Greg McElroy brought that up, right? Brought that up. We can talk more in a second. Then Clemson at 20. What's fun is we got Missouri and South Carolina this weekend in Columbia, South Carolina. We got South Carolina, Clemson in a few weeks in Clemson. So it's all going to sort itself out. Cole, I'll jump to you. I'll say this. I think head-to-head should matter, but I will say I think context matters, and I think context matters. And I think, too, we're splitting hairs over 21 and 22. Let's keep that in perspective. But at the same time, LSU's not playing better football right now than South Carolina. And if it boils down to it, we were talking 13 versus 12, I think we might have to more seriously factor in the head-to-head. But I don't have an issue with South Carolina at 21 ahead of LSU. Just simply put, because of Cole, like you said, you could argue they're the best 3-loss team in the country, and I don't think there's anybody hotter in the country right now than South Carolina.
I think the other thing that's really important is they made sure that they respected head-to-heads in some cases and then not in others, which is where I get really frustrated because of Louisville is the highest-ranked 3-loss team, which makes it seem like Louisville is a better team than South Carolina. If you played them in a neutral site field, what would the Cardinals versus the Gamecocks be? The War Chickens would kill the Cardinals. They would.
I said right now. I mean, seriously, that line. I would probably say South Carolina be favored on a neutral.
At least by a touchdown, if not more, right, Dave?
I think by more. Yeah.
See, I was probably gonna go neutral field like 5 or 6.
I think at least 8 points. That's where we're at because just their defensive front is so fantastic and the way they've been able to play. So to me, that's where I have a problem. But at the same time, I get it. You have a 2-loss team like Clemson. You also have a team like Washington State that's in the running. Washington State still is really bothersome to me because of they're that program that's not going to get into the college football playoff because of the way the rankings are, where they're not a group of 5 school. They're not an independent. They are in a still quote unquote Power 5 conference. And it's unfair. But when you look at South Carolina, they will solve itself out. The LSU, depending on what happens with them, the Clemson game, that's a head-to-head. Missouri this weekend, if they beat Missouri, they're going to climb on up. What I will say is that at the same time, when we get down to the finite details, what's going to really matter is what about Texas A&M and what about South Carolina? Because let's just say Texas A&M does lose to Texas. Texas is going to the college football playoff. More importantly, they're probably going to Atlanta. But that last seed, just in case, humor me that a 3-loss team gets in. Would South Carolina get that nod because they had the head-to-head over Texas A&M, and there's an 8-point difference between them? That's where I'm at this point. I understand it. The loss to LSU. I'm not saying it's inexcusable, but you and I can all agree that right now, the Nick Emanwari touchdown probably should have stayed. If it did, where would South Carolina be in this mix? That's kind of where we have to look at this grand scheme of things. But it's very clear there is a path for a 3-loss team to get in. But where is that path overall?
Yeah, see, I don't think there is. It's for the SEC now, just with the way they rank this top 4.
And I mean, Cole, you made the point too earlier that it's not going to happen. I agree with you. There's just too many teams in my mind to leapfrog to get in there as a 3-loss team. I don't care if you're from the SEC or from the ACC, Big 12, Big 10. I don't care what conference you're in. Maybe the chaos gets so crazy where we've got a few 3-losses.
I just don't see it. I think you need Notre Dame to lose one more, which I could.
You need a lot of people to lose.
You need Indiana to drop another one outside of Ohio State.
But you need Indiana to drop 2 games, Dave, don't you?
That's what I'm saying, yeah. I think they'd have to drop 2, which they're not going to lose to Purdue. Another point to this head-to-head we brought up that it's a little bit inconsistent with South Carolina being over LSU, Ole Miss, Georgia, is if this comes down to a tiebreaker with Tennessee and Alabama, that could be potentially real as well, where they haven't shown where they're going to kind of land on that. factor in Nico could be hurt. We've seen them. They've used that against teams last year, which I think is fair. I think Alabama should have got in over Florida State last year. At the time, Alabama would have beat Florida State with their backup quarterback. I think we all can agree with that. Who would have won that on the field? That'll be interesting if that tiebreaker kind of comes in, because, again, Tennessee got to win a couple of weeks ago in Knoxville.
I think the other thing that's really important, though, when you have to look at it, is that every other head-to-head has been respected when it comes to the rankings besides the LSU-South Carolina one. And South Carolina needs a lot of chaos to happen for them to even make it to Atlanta, where LSU just needs Tennessee to lose this weekend, A&M to lose to Auburn, and then lose to Texas. And then that's where we're kind of at. So it's like, it's a little different to where a 3-loss team gets in. The thing is that, and I've tried to preach this so much, it's not about the 3 losses that matter.
Single-digit wins.
It's single-digit wins that I keep bringing up. A 9-3 team is not getting in when you look at SMU that could be 11-2. When you look at Georgia that could be 10-2. When you look at a Washington State that could be 11-1, and they're just kind of fiending to try
just
to
an
find
independent school out there right now.
And it's ridiculous because if they've played quality competition and their only loss is to a Boise State team that we have at number 13. So like that's where the conversation is when it comes to the 3 losses. It has nothing to do with the 3. It has everything to do with the single digit next to the win column. And unfortunately for South Carolina, this is where it hurts them because I just don't see a scenario where they're going to be able to find their way in at 10 wins.
This will be tough for South Carolina fans, but they better be the biggest Clemson fans in the world. They need some losses to happen to the ACC for Clemson. I think they need for them to get back in. It would require obviously a win out and Clemson winning the ACC too. I think they need something like that to happen, which again would be in their break.
But but they have to win out throughout the regular season when they play Clemson, and they also have to hope that SMU drops 2 games. That way they're out of the conversation.
They need chaos in the ACC, essentially what you're saying. Again,
they are truly the one team that needs more chaos than anything else.
Yeah. Guys, LSU, back to them really quickly because you mentioned it's not the 3 losses, it's the single-digit wins. Well, how could LSU get double-digit wins? They go to the SEC title, they win, and what a story that would be. You mentioned what LSU needs. They need Georgia to beat Tennessee, Arkansas to beat Texas, or Auburn to beat A&M. Then they need themselves, Mizzou, Bama, and Ole Miss all to win out. So I ask you this question. What would you put the percentage at that a 3-loss team makes the playoff? I'd go like 5%. Maybe 10%. I'll go 10%.
I'll go 10.
I think it's very unlikely.
I'll split us in the middle and go 8.
10. Yeah, 10's fair.
Way to be different, Dave. All right, let's pull up the 12-team bracket. Boom. Here we go. Second team out, SMU. First team out, the Georgia Bulldogs. Cole, you and I talked about this earlier today. It's almost like hard for us to wrap our brains around, but there the Georgia Bulldogs are. They've got a huge opportunity this weekend, obviously, against Tennessee, who is in that 8 seed, ranked number 7. Looking at the SEC team specifically, Texas ranked 3rd. They're, of course, in that 2 spot, which is a great spot to be. Again, I mentioned Tennessee ranked 7th. They're in the 8 spot. You've got Alabama at 10. They are in the 10 spot, traveling to Bloomington. We can get more into that in a second. And Ole Miss in the 11 spot after their big win over Georgia, traveling to Penn State. Dave, I'll kick it over to you first. Initial reactions to the 12-team college football playoff bracket and Georgia being the first team out.
It's interesting. A real heavy Big Ten top 5 there. Four out of the top 5. I'm not saying I totally disagree with that. I feel like they kind of rewrited themselves with the
who'd have thunk that, by the way, for the top 5 Big Ten?
Now, I'll say this. I'll bring this up. Just running through it real fast. Right? It looks like they corrected themselves with BYU this week. I think that's fair. Again, they easily could have lost to Utah this past week, but I think they corrected themselves with Indiana and BYU for sure. Right? As we stand.
And Miami lost.
I got people texting me at work in college football right now being like, how could Indiana possibly get in over a 2-loss SEC team? They beat the crap. We're talking in staff meetings right now that they're
gonna fire Cole.
This is at a mid-tier SEC school, mind you, sitting here in a staff meeting talking about how they would beat the brakes off Indiana. This is a team that's fighting to get to 6 to 7 wins. Just giving you tips there.
Somebody at A&M is talking mad shit right now.
Yeah, and then so you got Tennessee at 7. I'm fine with that. It feels like I know Cole does his playoff rate. It feels like Notre Dame's kind of locked into that 8-9 spot, doesn't it? There's really no maneuvering.
As long as they win out, I think they're there. Yeah.
Yeah, as long as they don't lose to Army or USC. Miami 9, whatever. I had some people pissed off about that too. Whatever. I mean, how much further? What were they? 3 last week, right?
Yeah, they were 3. Yeah,
but that's about normal. 6-9. Bama 10. I mean, I think you could argue to put Bama ahead of Miami, but you're splitting hairs. I like Ole Miss is in. I was interested in seeing how much far they would move up. Boise State, again, the 3-point loss to Oregon, we talked about with Cole just a minute ago. Washington State, that's a win they had as well. Boise State, if they went out, they're for sure the G5 team. Now, if Army were to beat Notre Dame, that probably makes some things a little crazy, but I still think Boise has the more complete resume.
I think that clears the way for a 5th SEC team if Notre Dame. I think that's going to be the first team. That's going to be the first ones to slide in there. I think it's going to make the perfect way for an SEC team right there.
And then 2 quick things. Again, Georgia, I'm fine with them being out. They have not been playing good football right now. Again, I think Ole Miss should be ranked ahead of them. I was just talking about the consistency in the head-to-head. But no, Georgia's just not playing good football right now. Carson Beck's just not there. They're not doing anything offensively. The offensive line's getting whipped. I think there's a real shot. South Carolina right now, and some people may not even think that's that bold, would beat Georgia right now as we play on Monday, November 12th. And then going back to the last point here, if we turn over to Cole, I see a lot of people kind of being like, and I agree with this, and this is where we talked last week, resume or eye test. It feels like the resume is kind of the cover to get into the club, and the eye test is how long they let the girl stay and shake it on the stage a little bit. I mean, it's sorry.
Well, I mean, Dave, do you notice? By the way, great. Yeah, that was wonderful. that was wonderful, Dave.
Dude, I'm just being honest. So my point being here.
Can you hold on? Can you run that back one more time?
Clip that one out there.
No, run that back. I want to hear that again. I missed that.
Oh, well, I said it. The resume is the cover to get in. If you're in Vegas, you're probably paying $100, $200 a cover to get in. And the eye test is how long they let you stay on the stage and shake it. So if you want to clip that.
There we go.
And I'm saying from a Texas standpoint here, I see a lot of people, they don't have quality wins. Their resume is not playoff worthy if they lose to A&M. They go 10-2, lose to A&M. They have some quality losses. But your best wins at that point would be at Vandy, and you're cheering Colorado State makes the Mountain West Championship game and probably loses to Boise. Those would be your 2 wins. But I would say this, I'll ask y'all to this and people in the chat. If I give you $1 million and you had to go bet 1 through, let's just call it 12 right now. 3 through 12. I'm not counting Ohio State, Oregon. 3 through 12. I would bet Texas to win that game over anybody 4 through 12 ever there outside of Texas. Wouldn't y'all? I mean, I know we're talking about the resume not being there, and it's not. I 100% agree. But the eye test to me,
you give me $1 million
comparing common opponents. Indiana just struggled with Michigan.
Cole's picking South Carolina to beat Texas.
Oh my God!
Yeah, Cole's even going into the war chest of 21 down there. But he's not picking Louisville to beat
LSU. I'm picking them to get them upset.
And then, but again, I'll say this. I mean, we talk about comparing common opponents. I mean, Texas went into Ann Arbor weeks ago and just dominated them when we saw them at their best. Indiana at home the other week or last week struggled with them a little bit. I'm telling you, Texas is the weird experiment guinea pig this year in the first team of the 12 players. If they lose to A&M, the resume is not playoff worthy to me by any means. But you watch them, and as long as they don't get blown out by A&M, but if you watch them, you're like, yeah, they're a top 12 team in the country. I mean, am I wrong in thinking that?
No, not all. By the way, your $1 million question, Ole Miss 100% would be the team I would pick to run the table. Guys, I have to just be completely honest real fast. I'm ashamed. I'm disgusted with how much SEC bias is in the top 5. Because that's all we hear about is that the SEC bias is coming out strong. And there's 4 teams from the Big Ten in the SEC. I mean, in the top 5. Guys, there should be 5. We shouldn't even have to worry about that 15. Texas should not be in there. Another Big Ten team should be in there because the SEC bias is just too strong. Do you understand how stupid that sounds now when you look at 4 of the top 5 teams from the Big Ten and every single one of them at least has somewhat of an argument to make? Like Indiana, yes, the struggle against Michigan is real, but they also have dominated in every single other win. Oregon has been the most consistent team since week 3. You look at a team like Ohio State, the one loss they have is by 1 point to Oregon. And then Penn State, the one loss they have is by 7 points to a team like Ohio State. So it's mind-boggling to hear how SEC bias has to carry so much weight. I don't have a problem with any of the top 12. The only thing I will say is, how much weight are we going to carry if, let's just say Indiana loses by 3 points to Ohio State. Because what's going to be really interesting to me is that, are we going to give them credit for playing close despite Alabama losing to Tennessee? And Tennessee runs the table and they go 11-1 and they go to the college football playoff and they also go to the SEC championship and they lose to Vanderbilt. And let's just say Vanderbilt ends up going 8-4. Like, let's just humor ourselves and say they find a way to win their next game, or 7-5. They find a way to win against LSU. Are we going to say that that's not a convincing win for a convincing loss for Alabama? That's where I'm at when it comes to the overall ranking standpoint. Is there's a clear indication that there are teams that we don't know what to do with because of Alabama is playing really well right now. Ole Miss has a signature win over Georgia. And Georgia, by the way, anybody who's sitting here and saying, oh, well, Georgia belongs inside the top 10. No, they don't. Because you want to know why? Because last week we saw this. Alabama was number 11. Why was Alabama number 11? Because they hadn't played LSU. And every other team had to cannibalize each other. So at that point, they were all in the same ranking. Georgia has lost 2 games. Sorry, that's where I'm at. Is that the fact that Georgia lost 2 games to 2 teams right ahead of them at 11-12, at 10-11, and they're at 12, they're keeping the pace. That's where I can at least appreciate it. So there's a mix of things that go into this. The rankings are going to solve themselves out within the next 3 weeks or so, but still, you have to realize that for Georgia fans, there's a reason why you're outside the top 12 right now. And hopefully you understand it. And just all you got to do is figure out how to win against Tennessee.
Yeah, to your point, Cole, I was going to say, from the Georgia perspective, and I agree, they deserve to be that first team out. I will say for Georgia, when I was telling Dave this before we got going, Cole, before you jumped on, I find it really interesting what Reese and the gang have to say each of these weeks. I think kind of they drop some interesting nuggets, some context, kind of what they're thinking. And I don't know. I kind of find it interesting. They dropped the nugget in there about Georgia's strength of schedule. And it does kind of make me think, like, listen, if we're starting to compare resumes, I mean, Georgia's played the toughest schedule in the country, and they beat the dog shit out of Texas. So, I mean, you're going to tell me they're not one of the 12 best teams in the country? I know they're playing bad football. Okay. This is going to get solved this weekend. I'm not, like, dying on a ledge. I'm just saying, like, I mean,
are you going to keep Texas out at 11-1 is my main question.
No, not 11-1. No, if Texas loses to A&M, again, these are hypotheticals. If they lose to A&M, I mean, again, I wanted to mention, Dave, when you were talking about eye test resume. Did you not hear Reese Davis? What's their best win? Vandy? That's 2 weeks in a row. Somebody on the panel's taking a shot at Texas. 2 weeks in a row. So, I mean, you think the committee's not kind of thinking that too? Like, dude, if Texas loses to A&M, I don't know. I genuinely don't know.
I don't even know how
the schedule's going to be held against them.
I don't even know how you could argue they had the resume to get in. I don't even think that's a conversation. I think you would literally just be like, all right, I mean, you're moving the sliding scale a little bit now where you're like, all right, eye test, because the resume's way down here, dude. I mean, it's like getting into the University of Mississippi, Ole Miss. The girl could have a 16 on her ACT, but if she's a 10 physically, she's getting into school, man.
How dare you?
Dave's on a roll. Dave's on a roll.
Say, God bless Dave.
Dave's on a roll. I mean, no, listen, where was I even going? Yeah, I would say this. I would say this. No, listen, I would say this. Texas.
Ole Miss, Chris.
I'm not. No, what did you tell me, Dave? That you got to send a picture in with your application to get into Ole Miss.
You do. I'm from Mississippi. It's the only university in the country. It's the Harvard of the South. You have to send a picture in with your resume. If you're a female only, they don't care about the guy.
Dave is part-time comedian, apparently. No, I mean, I would say this. Texas came into this season because I said before the season, one of my hot takes was at 10-2, I didn't think Mizzou or Ole Miss. I thought there was a real possibility they'd miss the playoff. I told y'all, I think if Ole Miss would have beat Kentucky but lost to Georgia, I think they might be on the outside looking in. They wouldn't have that win to hang their hat on. That's all beside the point because that's not what happened, and they beat Georgia, and they deserve to be in the top 12. I'm just saying Texas has got a very similar schedule that Mizzou and Ole Miss did. They just have the Texas logo. So again, you beat A&M, you take care of your business the rest of the way out, you're in. Texas is in. I'm not trying to lobby they shouldn't be in. I'm just saying we're talking hypotheticals down the road, and we're talking about resume and eye test and 2 lost teams and 3 lost teams. Boy, if you're Texas, you better make sure you run the table, because the last thing you want to do is lose to A&M and put all this madness in the committee's hands. You know what I mean?
But here's the argument that I will have, is that if we're going based off of a resume and we're not going based off of logos, why is Miami at the 4 seed? And why is SMU at 14? Because if SMU has a better loss than Miami.
Is Miami still technically the favorite to win the conference? Is that?
Yeah, I think so, right?
I think based off of odds they are, but it's
Okay.
like it's slim.
Yeah.
Like it's between them and SMU and Clemson, but still, if we're going based off of resume, then why would SMU, with a loss by 3 points to the current favorite to win the Big 12, be at 14?
Yeah, it's
And Miami
plus 110.
That's that's what I'm saying, is that like when it comes to resume, that carries weight, but also so does the logo, which is why, again, Notre Dame, I have been very poignant about this. I will continue to scream from the rooftops. They lost to Northern Illinois. Look at every other team on the record. Boise State, who is their loss to? Oregon. Look at Ohio State. Who is their loss to? Oregon. Tennessee, who is their loss to? A pesky Arkansas team. Ole Miss, who are their losses to? Overtime against LSU, Kentucky. Penn State, who is their loss to? Ohio State. Indiana, undefeated. Alabama, who are their losses to? Tennessee, that's in the top 25 and in the college football playoff. And Vanderbilt, that isn't bad. Texas, who is their loss to? Georgia, on the outside looking in. The reason we're giving credit to Miami is because Miami carries the logo, but SMU has a better loss.
Miami's a fraud, Cole. I know you don't agree with that, but they are.
I agree that they're a fraud.
Them and Missouri go hand in hand to me.
No, they're a fraud when it comes to national championship contention. They're not a fraud when it comes to college football playoff persona. But at the same time,
they've been playing with fire week after week after week, and they finally faced a team that could clip them. They finally did.
Same time,
question, Cole.
And listen, I'm not going to come on here and spin zone you to death and tell you they're going to win the ACC.
I mean, South Carolina would beat the crap
freaking
out of them.
asses
I'm sorry,
beat.
they would.
You know, I'm not going to tell you they're going to win the conference because they got their asses beat. Now, I think Miami's got problems.
Okay, now tell me that.
Now,
do me a favor. Tell me if Cam Ward was with South Carolina over Lenore Sellers, that they would not be the same team. Or put South Carolina.
If Cam Ward was on Auburn, we might be talking about them in the playoffs. Straight up.
But then take South Carolina, put them in the ACC. What is their record? Like, that's the point that I'm coming to.
The thing I didn't like, guys, not even talking about Miami, it felt like this week they just rewarded just the win column. Whoever kind of had the most wins is kind of the easy thing to do. Let's move. Like, I don't know, maybe they'll defend themselves with Indiana there, which I'm okay with that. I just think this week it was kind of just like, we'll just go with the win-loss record, guys. Like,
okay, well, out of curiosity, if you could switch Indiana with anybody, who would it be?
If I would move someone over them that's in that 6-12 spot?
Like, if they're the 7 seed, because Indiana would still be in the playoff because they're undefeated. But if you could make one switch, who would it be? Because mine would be Notre Dame. I think that Indiana versus Tennessee would be a must-see showcase, and Notre Dame versus Alabama.
Take the over, right, Dave?
Yeah, what Joey Galloway said. Take
the over.
Take the over in that one, guys.
But the tradition, the ambiance, game out in South Bend, Indiana, with the Golden Domers versus the Gumps, that to me would be a better matchup versus Tennessee versus Notre Dame and Indiana versus Alabama. I'd much rather see Indiana take on Tennessee's defense. And even if it was in Rocky Top, I would be okay with that.
Yeah, it's a good segue, Cole, by the way. Let's look at some of these matchups. You just mentioned it. Tennessee, Notre Dame, I'll say for the second straight week. Or actually last week, what did I say? Texas, Alabama would feed families. Tennessee, Notre Dame. A home playoff game in Neyland would feed families. My goodness. You thought it was loud before. Tennessee, Notre Dame, Ole Miss at Penn State, Bama at Indiana.
Bama at Indiana would just seem weird, wouldn't it?
Bama.
I mean,
it'd be cool. I'm not saying it's not a bad thing. Isn't weird.
It'd be like it reminds me that
very unique.
It reminds me of them going to Wisconsin earlier in the year. Honestly.
So I can tell a fun story.
I don't know.
So I can tell a fun story. So my grandfather was a huge Notre Dame fan, and when Alabama played Notre Dame in the national championship in 2012. He wouldn't talk to me because I was a student there. and he refused to even come look at me. Christmas came around. He's like, cool, good to see you. And then just did not talk. He called me in the third quarter and said, all right, I'm done bitching. I'm going to call you now and we can start talking. This would be me and my dad for like 4 weeks in a row, because if he would not talk to me as an IU, he's an IU grad. So like everyone on my dad's side of the family would be like shunning me and I'd be cast to the outside. So personally, I want this matchup. Would I rather it in Tuscaloosa? Absolutely. But I really want this matchup simply because of I would love for my dad not to call me and just not bother me, because I think it'd be really, really funny for him to be like, oh yeah, we're going to beat your ass. It's like, okay, well, when it's 64-0 in the third quarter, give me a call, Dad.
Hey, it'd be they'd be reunite. Kalen DeBoer, Kane Womack would be reunited where they first met when they were the OC DC for Tom Allen's staff.
How funny would that be too, by the way?
That would. A little homecoming. I'd love the
path.
We
got the rematch of the Chick-fil-A Bowl. CP.
I was about to say, I would love the path for Ole Miss here. I really would. I would love the path taking on Penn State. I know it'd be in Happy Valley, but the matchup, give me the Rebels, the matchup against BYU too, and then good chance you're taking on a
Ole Miss. You're right. Ole Miss would have a pretty good draw.
That'd be a nice path. Sign me up for that path if I'm a fan of the Rebels. Sign me up.
When Dave told me earlier, he said make a bet on who would be the pick that you would make, I was looking at the schedule. Take Ole Miss over Penn State. Take Ole Miss over BYU. All I have to do is hope that they beat Texas in the head-to-head, and then they play Oregon. And honestly, let's be real for a minute. Texas and Ole Miss, depending on how Texas looks this weekend against Arkansas, is a pretty good litmus test to see where these two teams rank up.
They're very similar. Very similar. I didn't mean to cut you off there, Cole, but they are.
No, you're
it is going to be a litmus test. Yeah, I guess you're right. It's all right. Well, Ole Miss beat them by what, 40? Well, let's go beat them by 50.
I was saying, you got to see how much you're going to beat them by. That's a big deal.
Hey, we texted about it earlier in the week. Let's see some fans in the comments say too. How many teams? Again, this is a pretty good list right here of who we can compare to. How many teams do y'all truly think can win a national championship? Not just get to the playoffs, not win a game or two, like win the whole thing.
7.
Ohio State,
that's
Oregon,
1,
Texas,
2, 3,
Ole Miss,
4.
I'll go Alabama. I don't want
That's
to.
5.
I don't want.
That's 5. There's 2 more. You're missing.
7. I'm gonna go. You got to go Ole Miss and Georgia.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Georgia. I'm gonna go Georgia as my 6th.
Did you say
one.
Tennessee?
Tennessee's the 7.
Yeah, Tennessee. They can. Yeah. I'd put them at the bottom of that list, but they can. I
agree. It's 6 or 7. You could make a case for
Tennessee,
I guess, because you don't trust Nico and the injury and stuff. But I would call the defense gives me a lot of hope. Yeah, I would say 7. I'd probably say 7 right now. I don't have a ton of confidence in Alabama doing that either, but still,
it's just who gets hot. I mean, it really is who gets hot here. I mean, and that's why you love Ole Miss. Because
Ole Miss is as complete as a team as there is.
If they start playing their best football, they're better than anybody.
Do they not have holes, and are they somewhat flawed? But so is everyone else. That's just kind of the season we're in. Everyone has holes because of the transfer portal and just the lack of depth. Again, we talk about it all the time. The top 40 when you're building a college football roster is the most important. It's not your 85. It's not just the starting 22 plus some of the specialists on there. Your top 40. The parity's there now. Kirby Smart said going into the season, this is the worst depth he's had since probably his first year in 2016. Yeah, I mean, I'm totally with. I think Ole Miss legitimately, if they got this bracket, I mean, I'd be pretty shocked if they weren't at least in the semis.
At least in the semis.
I think that there's a conversation for 9, and the reason I say this is let me just go. I think that with Miami, I don't think that they are going to win a national championship. I don't think that they can. But what I say is that. Do you remember in 2019 when Joe Burrow won it and it was all because of just the quarterback play and the consistency? Cam Ward has that mentality depending on where the bracket breathes in his favor. Let's just say somehow they get the 3 seed. Miami finds a way to get the 3 seed. And somehow when you look at 6 versus 11, it's a much easier matchup because Penn State loses a game or Ole Miss jumps up or something along those lines. There's a shot. And I think that also you have to include just because of where they are, Penn State's defense always shows up and delivers and makes it a 4-quarter game to where if you get one pass or one great run by Nick Singleton, that'll be fine to where it can get you deeper and deeper into the postseason. It's 7, but like at the same time, I think that Miami and Penn State are on the outside looking in the way that we would when we say the first 2 out in a college football playoff ranking.
Yeah, I mean, I just think when Penn State plays a really good team, they're going to lose.
Yeah, well, I mean, death taxes and change factor.
Right. I mean, that's, congratulations. James
they're
Franklin is
they're
now.
the biggest benefactor of the playoff.
He's now a college football playoff coach.
We've said this a million times. They built the playoff because they were tired of Penn State being left out.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, James Franklin, congratulations. You're now.
But if you told me that they made it to the semis, it wouldn't shock me. Like their pathway was easy.
If they beat Ole Miss, I'd probably take them against BYU. Yeah.
I would immediately take them against BYU. Like based off this schedule right now, if somehow Jackson Dart threw 3 interceptions and they weren't able to find any consistency on offense, yeah, I would take them over BYU and they'd be in the semis.
Yeah, Ole Miss's run game would be again. I said they're probably the most complete team, and again, some of that's recency bias, just naturally after the Georgia dominance. Again, most physically dominated Georgia team I've seen maybe since the 2017 Auburn game when they played in Jordan-Hare and Auburn got them really good in that first game before Georgia got ruined in the rematch. But I mean, if Ole Miss struggled against a good defensive front, it stopped the run game, and like Cole said, Jackson Dart just was off that day. It just had a multi-turnover day, which is possible. It's possible.
I mean, listen, we've seen Lane have a bad play calling day. We've seen it.
You know what's really
happen. Offensive line's the concern for Ole Miss, but again, the offensive line's a concern for a lot of teams.
Of people.
Look at the Joe Moore Award finalist that came out today, guys. You're sitting there, you're like,
stop. I had to vote for that.
You're like, good gosh, if they win it, that shows you how bad the offensive line play is this year.
I had to vote for that.
Who were the finalists? Maybe I can look this up.
I'm pulling it up.
Army, okay. Alabama, Indiana, BYU,
a lot of
Tennessee. There was a lot. Like when they asked us for our top 5, I was like, okay, hang on. Do I have to give a top 5? Or could I give a top 3? Like, is that okay? Because I don't really feel comfortable naming 2 honorable mentions. They're not going to be in it at the end of the day.
Hey guys, really quickly. If Texas A&M wins out, is it as simple as they're in? They beat Tech. If they went out, beat Texas, they in? They're 15. We wondered, right? Are they going to move down a spot? They didn't play.
You got to think they're going to have to go play another game after that, which I don't think they're going to leave out.
Because they'd be SEC title. Right?
Hold on.
I think playing in that SEC championship game will benefit them because again, they're not leaving. I was on my show last night. Dave talks about an Alabama fan in there, and I appreciate him listening. But he just kept asking if Alabama got in and lost the SEC championship games, they'd be out. There is no way in Haiti the team that gets in with 2 losses in the SEC championship.
I was about to say the only way an SEC title can
would be LSU.
Would be LSU, who would finish 9-4. They would be out. But if it's anybody else, they're not. You're not getting left out.
Business money. Do you really? Because the CFP is trying to keep the SEC and Big Ten from going to do their own thing. You want to really piss them off and make them go take their ball and go play somewhere else. You leave out the runner.
It's like you were talking about today, Dave, when you commented. Greg Sankey's not going to let Texas not make the playoff. He's just not. It's not going to happen.
No, I think that the main point is also when you look at Texas A&M, they would have at least a decent enough resume with a win over LSU, with a close loss to Notre Dame, with the game against South Carolina, and the win over Texas that they would get in. By the way, there's over like 1,200 people watching right now. So do us a favor. If you are watching, make sure that you like the video, hit that ring notification. And of course, hit subscribe because we are growing to become the #1 SEC entity in all of college football. And you want to be subscribed to this channel because we give you top-notch content. More importantly, you get to be a part of the banter and conversation. And we appreciate you guys for watching. But still,
listen to the bear.
But still, when you look at this Texas A&M squad, their defense is sound. They have an offensive identity. The question that I have is, will they show up without Le'Veon Moss? That to me is one of the biggest issues that we're going to figure out pretty close this next week when they play New Mexico State. What does their run game look like with Ruben Owens and Le'Veon Moss out? Now they got to turn to E.J. Smith as the #2 running back and not the guy who is just the pass catcher out of the backfield.
No, I agree with you, Cole. It's a missing piece a lot of people aren't talking about. I agree. Because I think A&M just has been on a bye. Isn't this a weird year where you feel like when a team's on a bye and it's like, I feel like I hadn't seen y'all play in months. Like,
you know what? Okay, but you know what's so interesting is that we talked about this. Where is Texas A&M in all of this shindig last week? Because of when Ole Miss and LSU played, the question was, well, LSU has the head-to-head win over Alabama, but they also have they haven't played Alabama, but they have the head-to-head win over Ole Miss. But what if Ole Miss wins and LSU wins? What happens to Texas A&M? Clear as day, they drop from the 14 to the 15 seat because everyone else had to drop a spot. So that's where we're kind of at. I will say, what I'm really going to be interested in is seeing how the chaos occurs down the stretch because of what happens. And just humor me. I know that we're an SEC channel, but I do think this is interesting. If Army goes undefeated and Boise State has a 3-point loss to Oregon, the number 1 seed in the country, are you at least not having that conversation about 2 Group of 5 schools being in? I don't agree with it. I don't think it's fair. But
you can have the conversation, but it's a quick one.
Yeah, it's not gonna happen.
So who are you leaving out?
Because Army would beat Notre Dame, right?
Army's strength of schedule is 120th, and I'll be honest with you guys.
That has.
I'm not a big Notre Dame fan, so I think if you gave Army Boise State schedule, and again, this is a subjective opinion just from watching.
Give South Carolina Miami schedule. Let's have that conversation.
No, I agree, but I'm saying I think Army would have lost to Oregon on the road too, and definitely not by. I think by more than 3, and I think they may have dropped another game in the Mountain West. So, I mean, I think if you gave Boise Army schedule, I mean, I think they would win every game, and I think they could beat Notre Dame on a given day. I just think Boise's resume would be a little better.
Here's where I come at this. How can you justifiably leave Washington State out at 12-1 when they play against Oregon State and they get or 11-1 and they do their job and they lose to Boise State, and then you say, well, Boise State isn't good enough to be in the playoff? Or you say Boise State is and Army is, and you make those same comments. Like, that's where we're at when it comes to this conversation at this point. Is there's so many other factors that play a role in this entire situation.
And a lot of resume comparing. It reminds me, guys, I mean, this conversation, I meant to tell you this earlier today, Cole. This reminds me a lot of the conversations we have when we get to March Madness and even the baseball field of 64, where it's a lot of RPI, strength of schedule, how many this did you score, that did you do. That's going to come into play for sure. That is absolutely.
Timeout. Siskey, Ole Miss is winning. They have the easiest pathway, so please tell me.
We do got Siskey in here. How about it?
I say, tell me, Siskey, why Ole Miss is not going to do it, because they are the best. They are the most dangerous 2-loss team in the country, and I've been screaming that for about a month now.
By the way, Joe K dropped a few bear emojis. We'll have to pick which one.
He's not a big Ole Miss fan now, guys. Just a heads up.
Okay. Guys, I want to, as we close out here.
He's not decked out. He didn't have Colonel Reb staked out.
He didn't have the powder blue on or anything. As we close out, I do want to get to this question, guys, because we did touch on Tennessee, obviously, but I think it's interesting. If Tennessee loses this weekend, are they cooked? There's an idea right now, and I think you can sense it in the comments, guys. I think Tennessee fans are a little on edge at the thought they lose to Georgia, even if they went out the rest of the way, that Tennessee might be the odd man out. What do we think about that?
I could tell. I mean, I could easily, because you kind of get into the Texas thing again, guys. The cover and then how you look on the stage is how long you get to stay on, guys. And again, you got the one win against Bama, but if you go lose to Georgia, I mean, what's their second best? I mean, what's Tennessee's second best win? NC State or Vandy?
But they've still got that Bama win, man.
I'm not saying it's worse than Texas. I'm just saying if we get into this
right.
tie, I mean, again, I see Tennessee fans getting a little upset. Well, we beat Bama head-to-head. But when you're in a multiple team tie, head-to-head, I'm not going to say it's
It's not the only thing.
It's not weighted as heavily because there's more teams involved. But, I mean, in that case, you'd have Ole Miss, Georgia, Alabama, potentially Texas if they lost. A&M if they beat Texas. It's a lot of teams still. I mean, technically, I guess Missouri. I mean, Eli Drinkowitz is voting in there. We'll have them in there. But I think out of those 6 teams, legitimately, I think the 2 teams that have the worst case just resume-wise, and I think Texas is the eye test scale is up higher for them than it is for Tennessee. I mean, I think Texas and Tennessee would have the 2 worst resumes out of those 6 teams. I mean, wouldn't y'all say?
Dude, how important Cole mentioned what the litmus test of what Ole Miss did to Arkansas. I think Texas, they don't just need to beat Arkansas. They need to beat them badly. Like, I think style points are going to start to matter down the stretch.
If they want to get in at 10-2, I agree with you, Chris.
They need to win impressively. Like what they did against Florida, that's exactly what you got to do. Be up 35-0, keep the foot on the gas pedal, go win by 30+. You need to leave as little doubt as possible. That way, if you do go into Kyle Field and lose by a field goal or lose by 7 points, you can say, well, rivalry game on the road at night, but we should still be in, and look at what we did. There's going to be lots of lobbying like that, I think, happening, especially if things go a little bit sideways. By the way, our guy Siski says he's got Tulane.
He's a John Summerall guy, baby.
Aren't we all?
No wonder why I like Siski so much. No wonder why.
Aren't we all?
You know what's going to be really interesting is we already saw the
Cole, really quickly, also to add, what if Tennessee gets smoked by Georgia? I guess that's another piece of that. Go ahead, Cole. Sorry.
No, what I'm saying is, like, imagine if the way that hang on. Okay, stop. My dog's freaking out. Anyways, imagine if we didn't care about the head-to-heads, because it's very clear that we don't when it comes to LSU versus South Carolina. So head-to-heads, I thought were going to play a major deal in this, because the head-to-head with Tennessee and Alabama would have carried weight. It doesn't, because of if South Carolina can be ranked ahead of LSU, that's where we're at this point. Whoever's playing better down the stretch. If if Alabama finds a way to play a close matchup, and I don't think that they will, but I'm just saying, imagine if they play a close matchup against Oklahoma. If they play down to the wire, and then you look at the way that Tennessee played against Oklahoma, is that not going to carry weight if they're both 10-2? Those are things that are going to matter at the end of the day. I still feel like, and spoiler alert for those of you who haven't seen the preview, the two men ahead of me both picked Georgia to win. I picked Tennessee to win. So I think this is going to be a moot point at the end of the day, because I believe the Volunteers are going
to ruin the preview, Cole. Thanks.
I did not ruin said things. I said everything that needed to be said. That was
everybody was on the edge of their seat waiting on my pick.
I am picking Tennessee to win this game, to where at that point, the only question is, do you win against Vandy? And I think that you will, even though the game is in Nashville. But still, if you look at this Tennessee game, depending on how they play also in this matchup, is going to carry a lot of weight. The other thing that's going to really carry a lot of weight, what does Indiana look like when they play against Ohio State? Because of whether or not you agree, Indiana's schedule ranks 100th in the country. Tennessee's schedule ranks 44th in the country. So add that together. That's going to be a bigger deal than I think that we give a lot of credit to. And at 10-2, a 3-point loss to Georgia and a 6-point loss or a 7-point loss to
Arkansas. Yeah.
Is that going to matter as much as a 28-point loss to, say, Ohio State?
But are we talking about, the thing is, Cole, you got to factor in are they talking losses or wins? I mean, you go to wins.
What do you weigh heavier?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying some people look at it differently. And what is the committee? Are they going to, hey, well, they don't have bad losses, but it's like, all right, they beat Alabama. It's like, but then after that, your second best win is probably at Vanderbilt to end the year.
Yeah. I mean, at the same time, though, let's just call a spade a spade. The Big Ten will get 4 in. The SEC will get 4 in. And there may even be a 5th in unless Notre Dame chokes it, as Siski points out in the comments.
Yeah, let's say our guy Siski agrees. Big Ten gets 4, SEC gets 4 unless Notre Dame chokes. Guys, in closing, let's get out of here. But before we do, we got a $10 super chat from Gary Harper. Gary, appreciate you, Gary. Gary Harper says Ole Miss lost to Kentucky, who Tennessee beat. Tennessee beat Vandy. That's another one over the head-to-head with Bama. Win or keep it close against Georgia. And the only reason we're out is the usual Bama bias. Yeah, you two Bama
Georgia.
Homers. You
just
Bama
beat Georgia.
That is what I'm saying to Tennessee fans. That they're all worried about being left out at 10-2 when they still control their own destiny and handle business. They finish 11-1 and they're in Atlanta the next week. At worst case, they're probably the 6th seed, and at best case, they're sitting at home first weekend with that bye.
But I'm sorry, I'm also going to bring this up. What happened with Ole Miss when they played against Arkansas?
Yeah.
It was a show. It wasn't even close. You saw 2 records be broken, which, by the way, one of them was set back in the 1960s when Arch Manning was playing, and the other one was set last year when Trey Harris was playing. So, like, that's where my brain is at. Like, I respect
That's
it.
the whole league, though. Like, there's no transitive problem. Everybody, like, I mean, he did mention, Tennessee, like, beat Vandy.
Okay.
You
Dave,
could say Alabama beat LSU, Ole Miss didn't in a race.
Dave, do me a favor. How long has Ole Miss been an underdog this season? Or more importantly, how long have they been down this season in a game?
2 minutes against Kentucky.
Yeah.
Against Kentucky, and everyone likes to bring up the LSU game, and I'm like, they were down for literally 0.0 seconds. Like,
no, I don't know how you could put Ole Miss in over Alabama if you're comparing. That's what I would say. That's where I would. I mean, I think it stops at Alabama beat LSU in the same venue that Ole Miss lost to them. And I think that's where it would stop if they both finished 10-2.
No, it wouldn't.
If Ole Miss is out, Georgia'd have to be out, right?
I don't think Ole Miss is out. I'm not saying that. I'm saying who you would pick if they were tied higher seeding and stuff. I don't think either one of them get out at 10-2.
Would Georgia be out at 9-3?
Yeah.
Because of that. Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
You might see some Georgia homers trying to lobby the strength of schedule thing, but at some point, man, it's I know your schedule was, but again, eye test. They've looked like shit all year.
But that's where you have to get some wins, which I think is where the committee tonight went a little wrong, where they just went right scratch or chalk, and you just go freaking records.
But here's the other thing that I will say: Ole Miss does pass the eye test because they trailed for literally 0.0 seconds against an LSU team that still has a shot to go to the college football playoff if they were to win out and they find a way to Atlanta. And they trailed, and they beat Georgia. So when you look at that, that's it. Georgia's playoff, and honestly, whether or not I agree with it, but Tennessee's playoff, at least at this moment, is Saturday. And I honestly think that Georgia is not going to walk away, and they're going to be the odd man out. I know that I'm dying on this hill, and I'm okay with dying on this hill. But like the same way,
you have Georgia out no matter what, Cole.
I do.
You have them going 9-3.
But like at the same time, when I look at Georgia, and I talk about Georgia, it's the same way that at the start of the year, I viewed the Tennessee squad, is that Tennessee needs to prove to me that they can get in. And I had them at 9-3, and I said, okay, well, they're going to be the odd man out because they'll lose the game, whether it be a non-conference or not. They're still going to drop a game they shouldn't.
They did.
Yeah, and they did. But now they can make up for it. I just don't think Georgia's going to make up for it. I don't. You're asking me at this point, after watching that defensive line of Ole Miss and the way that they played and the way that they were able, it had nothing to do with Carson Beck. It had everything to do with the fact of the front five, the offensive line, how poorly they protected Carson Beck. You're going to try to sell me that with James Pierce and one of the best front sevens in college football is not going to feast and get their own against Georgia.
No, but I also think, again, this is where what I believe in college football and what I was taught in college football, if this is not true, this is as wild of a year as it is if Georgia goes and loses this game to me on Saturday, where anything can happen. I mean, Kirby Smart with a playoff chance on the line, first night game against Tennessee since 2006. If they don't win this game, I would be – this goes against the entire program. Essentially, no one comes into our house and takes what's ours, and you lose this game. And I'll say this, Mike Bobo gets a lot of crap. Really, a lot of the offense gets a lot of crap, and a lot of it's very deserved. Mike Bobo and them know the exact same thing we're watching, too, when they're watching Tennessee. They're going to get on the edges. They're not just going to, I think, drop Carson Beck back and let James Pierce and not chip him and just let him come free. They're very aware of that, too. So I think this is where Mike Bobo, I'm not going to say he's going to be in his bag because he hasn't been in his bag all year. I just think the guy could potentially have one of his better offensive game plans of the season because you got to look, too. Tennessee's not played well defensively the last 2 weeks, guys. They've given up their most rushing yards to Mississippi State and Kentucky the last 2 weeks. I'm not saying Georgia can take advantage of it either, but I don't think when you really break it down as recently, yes, it's definitely a Tennessee advantage on the defensive line. But with the way Tennessee has played the last 2 weeks, it's not as an advantage as I think just the casual observer, if you don't go back and watch the games, is giving it credit for. I just think if this game was in Knoxville, I'm taking Tennessee. I don't know. I don't see Kirby Smart losing this game in Sanford Stadium. And I don't know, man. It's just me. I just don't see
Okay.
it.
Well, here's the deal. Paisley is the betting dog. She makes it clear who we bet on, and she has told me multiple times that we at least take the points when it comes to Tennessee.
Hey,
Regardless
listen,
of the total
hell, Nico
I
may not even.
I agree with you.
Listen,
you could have got it where it opened up at 13.5. I think you'd feel incredible.
Listen, Nico
What do
may
you
not
say?
even
13? 13? Cool.
What is
She
it,
says
9.5 now?
Nico may not even be playing according to Chris the Bear.
That's where we're going to rename some hay.
Well, I'll ask my bear. My bear is Nico playing? Don't answer that.
He's going to have to come on the show.
I'm not going to be that guy.
Yeah, don't get that clip.
Don't show and give his name up to Cole on live television.
Live passing of the torch.
A name that,
the bear.
A name that I did not pick that you two picked for me, and I got thrown into.
Bear. Indeed. All right, let's close it out, boys. We could go all night, obviously. Great stuff, as always. Again, we're going to do this every single week, every Tuesday night, breaking it down, banter. And here's the thing. Cole and I mentioned this earlier. Dave, I know you'd agree. Everybody in the comments, you'd agree. The madness is just beginning. I mean, it's going to really – I say it's going to sort itself out. Some of the questions will, not all. But, I mean, to think we have all the answers right now is just – we know we don't, right? What if this happens, this upset, that one? It's going to get even wackier, and we're going to be here breaking it down for you guys along the way. So,
boys,
what's up?
Got a little update. According to a reliable source, Nico will play on Saturday. So now we're in a sourcing war. Let's figure out who
that comes from the SEC Unfiltered Bear.
No. It comes from a friend of a friend of a friend. But let's just say
that's exactly what Felica did.
But let's just.
Oh, I was just giving you the Bear nickname, and now
which is insane. But you're not saying 100%.
No,
you're not.
But
and you also started it per a source. Felica's problem was he's like, I've been told Nico's not going to play, and then he said a few more things, and he goes, I could be wrong. It's just what I heard. It's like, no, then don't say it.
Don't say it. No, I'm willing to throw it out there. According to people that I have spoken to, and according to somebody that just texted me, he is going to play. Okay. Now, is that going to factor into the outcome of the game? That's a whole different story.
I think it would go a long way in factoring the outcome if he plays or not.
If it's Gaston Moore getting the start and it's the UCF walk-on and I inherited
Dave, I had Tennessee folks chirping me on Twitter that, how dare you say we can't win this game with Gaston Moore at quarterback? I'm like,
oh my God, stop.
Anyway, look, we're gonna get down. We're gonna get down a rabbit hole.
I'm drinking the orange Kool-Aid, but I am not drinking it that much. Come on.
We're gonna get down a
giant
rabbit
difference.
How dare you disrespect Gaston Moore?
Exactly.
That way?
How dare she?
Anyways, guys, again, appreciate you all tuning in. Almost 1,500 of you tuned in live. Can't say thank you enough. As Cole mentioned earlier, make sure you like, subscribe, turn on notifications. Check us out via podcast, wherever you get your podcast. You can also find us across all social media platforms as well as our website, secunfiltered.com. And make sure you follow these guys, Dave Shumate at Mach 10 Sports, Cole Thompson at Mr. Cole Thompson, me at CPhilly19. You see us all over the internet, all over social media. You know at this point. But again, can't say thank you enough. We'll do this each and every single Tuesday night. And, of course, the final Sunday, when that final bracket drops, it'll be pure madness. Going to be a lot of fun. Guys, again, appreciate you all tuning in. For Dave Shumate and Cole Thompson, I'm Chris Phillips. Thank you all so much. Have a great night. We'll talk to you all on the other side.